60, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan and Amy. I hope people observed the anniversary yesterday by going and getting their 70-second jab like Governor Hochul in New York. Yesterday, the 3-year anniversary of the vax mandate that the Biden-Harris administration imposed. You remember. Seems like it was just yesterday.
I'm announcing tonight a new plan to require more Americans to be vaccinated to combat those blocking public health. First, we must increase vaccinations among the unvaccinated with new vaccination requirements. But we need to do more. This is not about freedom or personal choice. So tonight, I'm announcing that the Department of Labor is developing an emergency rule to require all employers with 100 or more employees that together employ over 80 million workers to ensure their workforces are fully vaccinated or show a negative test at least once a week. My plan will extend the vaccination requirements that I previously issued in the healthcare field. Already, I've announced...
And that's how we beat COVID, you'll hear tonight from Kamala Harris, perhaps, if the conversation turns to that topic. For more on this, pleased to be joined... Oh, we haven't talked to him in a while. How about that? Marty Makary, Dr. Marty Makary to you, Amy. He's a professor at Johns Hopkins School of Medicine.
And a New York Times best-selling author.
He's also at Bloomberg School of Public Health, Chief Medical Advisor to Sesame Care, and the award-winning author of The Price We Pay, What Broke American Healthcare and How to Fix It. He's got a new book, Blind Spots, When Medicine Gets It Wrong and What It Means for Our Health. That's available September 17th, but of course you can pre-order at all the usual places. Blind Spots is the book. That seems timely, as there's an effort to just walk away from the mess that was made over the last 3 years, isn't there? Dr. Makary, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Great to be with you guys. Good to be here.
So the that vaccine mandate you heard the big guy roll out 3 years ago, that was the difference maker, right?
Well, natural immunity is what dulled down the pandemic. It was not the transient 3 to 6 months of protection that some people got from the vaccine when it was a good match. I saw, by the way, the Harris campaign has a requirement for their employees to get the COVID vaccine, ignoring natural immunity once again. So I'm not sure anyone learned any lessons from any of the mishaps.
Well, that's part of the thing. I guess my question too, just generally speaking, is it a problem of blind spots, or is it a problem of a blind ideological politics?
Yeah, it's like everyone asked me if AI is going to fix healthcare, and I tell them we don't need AI, we just need I.
Yeah, right.
So.
Well, but I mean, isn't that the case? I mean, one of the things that we were talking about in real time, concurrent to all of the sloganeering and policies that were rooted in sloganeering, that now people like Tony Fauci say, I don't know where that 6 foot distancing thing come from. We're talking about ideology. We're talking about people who ignored the basics of what we knew about virology coming into that pandemic, like natural immunity.
Well, in all seriousness, Dan and Amy, the most dangerous thing you can do in a society is to push through a novel medication through an emergency authorization process, fire the FDA regulators who object to it because they don't agree with pushing it through, mandate it in the population, fire people for not getting it, and then suppress the doctors who speak up with different opinions about it. That is the most dangerous thing you can do, especially in a free society that values free speech.
And that's what happened to you.
That's what happened to all of us.
Yeah.
Everyone, the whole group of doctors, and there's a lot of them, who felt differently about mandating the vaccine or pushing the boosters in young, healthy people. including the regulators at the FDA who were smart doctors. The two top vaccine experts at the FDA were both pushed out over this very issue. So that is the most dangerous thing you can do in a society. Now, in my book, Blind Spots, I didn't talk much about COVID. It's become tribal, and people are, seeing it through their own lens, and I think they're sick of it. But it's still looming large today. The Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, in my opinion, he is elected because the guy who ran against him, Scott Jensen, who's a doctor, he opposed vaccine mandates. He wanted schools to reopen. He was right on COVID, but Facebook took down his campaign ads. Social media took him, deplatformed him. TikTok closed his account over disinformation over COVID. So his campaign basically shut down in terms of their advertising ability, and he ended up losing to Walz by 7 points. So that's how we got Tim Walz.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. The doctor gets shut down. Just listen to Coach when it comes to immunology and vaccines and experimental drugs and all the everything public health or medicine related. I mean, it's astounding, but that's what it was. The break along ideological lines, though, is something that can't be ignored because this is the lens through which people are viewing conversations about more than COVID when it comes to public health. I mean, even conversations like we've had in the recent days about mental health of young people in the wake of that Georgia school shooting. And let's talk about some of the things we were talking about pre-COVID, like the number of young people on Adderall and what are the long-term impacts of that? And do we have over-medicated young people and an over-medicated population generally? We're now starting to creep back into some of those conversations, but those, I guarantee you, will break along ideological lines too.
Well, look, I'm so excited that there's this new interest in addressing chronic disease in America, addressing America's health. We've never heard anyone take that on before. And RFK, I thought, said it best when he said, we disagree on a lot, but one thing every American should agree on is that we finally need to address chronic diseases. We need to love our children more than we hate each other. That was, I just thought, beautiful. And I am excited because we are, for the first time ever, hearing people with political might talk about addressing big food, big ag, big pharma, addressing the food supply. And this is what I write about in the book, Blind Spots. We have developed these giant blind spots. Maybe we need to treat more diabetes with cooking classes than just throwing insulin at people. Maybe we need to talk about school lunch programs and not just putting every overweight kid on Ozempic. We have the most medicated population in the history of the world. Where are we going? We poison the food supply, engineered highly addictive food ingredients. We liberally dole out mental health diagnoses to kids, even engaging in the medicalization of ordinary life. And we have this giant $4.7 trillion healthcare system that's burdening every business in American. And we're, listening to people celebrate that, Medicare gets to negotiate the prices on 10 medications. That is not a healthcare plan. That's not a healthcare solution. We've got to deal with the root causes of our health crisis.
Can you expand on you saying that we're poisoning our food supply?
So food today, Amy, is designed to be addictive by the food scientists. The same food scientists that worked in big tobacco shifted over to the food industry. Take bread, for example. The modern day bread that we eat is so processed, it's stripped of its fiber, it's chopped up into such tiny fragments, it's denatured, it acts like sugar on the pancreas. So the white bread, the Wonder Bread, the pastries, croissants, pastas, all the stuff that we give kids and people eat ubiquitously, it acts like sugar. And it's not natural fat that's bad for you, as the government's food pyramid told us. It's refined carbohydrates and ultra-processed foods. And then the pesticides on top of that are probably accounting for why the age of puberty is going down and fertility is going down, because they have hormone-like properties in children.
Interesting.
May not want to eat.
and yeah, well, right.
I mean, anything like bread.
And so I mean, I know the conversation you say big ag and big food, but what does a public health solution look like? I mean, yeah, we can have a conversation about it. We can talk to experts like you and identify the problem. But then what's a regulatory solution to something like what you're describing?
So I don't think anyone's talking about banning foods. Now, there are certain food additives that are not allowed in Europe because they are so sketchy. So when you buy Fruit Loops in the United States, it looks different from Fruit Loops that is made for Canada. The same company makes two different versions. And so what people are talking about is educating the public and getting rid of the food subsidies that are making our seed oils so cheap. Seed oils are not natural. They sound natural, but they're not. They're denatured. They are changed into chemicals, and so they are a misnomer. And the body is rejecting them, and it's causing general body inflammation. Yet seed oils like sunflower oil, vegetable oil, corn oil, soybean oil, they're so cheap because the government subsidizes it. Why are we subsidizing this to make it cheap, and then it's having this ill effect on our children? Half of our nation's children are obese. A lot of these bad foods are changing the microbiome, that is our gut health. And at the same time, we're starting to see associations I describe in the book, Blind Spots, of the gut health and mental illness in children. Autism has gone up 14% each year for the last 23 years. Who is going to stop and say, what's going on here? Pancreatic cancer has doubled in the last 2 years. Who's going to stop and say, what is going on here? We've done a terrible thing to doctors in this country. I love being a doctor, but doctors have been told, put your head down, do your job, bill and code, and we're going to measure you by your throughput. And so no one is looking at these big questions and addressing the root causes until now.
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, that's sensible too. Talking about things like what we're subsidizing, to the extent we should subsidize any industry, in my view. Also, too, I mean, this has to be a conversation about agency capture too. These big companies, whether in the agribusiness sector or the pharmaceutical sector, that have captured their quote unquote regulators, like the FDA. That needs to be a part of it too, right?
Yeah, the F in FDA stands for food. I mean, people forgot about that.
Yeah.
And the H in H stands for health. It's not drugs, and the old boys. Where's the research on food as medicine from the NIH? Instead, they're busy funding bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, China. So we need some fresh leadership, and we need to get rid of all the conflicts of interest so the industry is not writing our food guidelines.
What about on the continuing studies, though, of the impact of the vaccines? I mean, there was that important Oxford study that came out a few weeks back, significant in size and conclusion that basically the vaccine had a higher incidence of negative outcomes than did young people 15 and under getting COVID, which we kind of sort of knew at some point midway through the 3-year saga. But those studies that continue to assess not only the decisions that were made, but the ongoing impacts of said decisions.
Look, it's really interesting data, and a group of us, Vinay Prasad, myself, wrote an article during COVID that if you mandate the COVID booster in young, healthy people, you're going to have a net public health harm because of the 18-fold higher rate of down effects from the vaccine booster. Not to mention you're going to create never vaxxers for life, which is not a good thing. So there's something there, but the NIH and our current government has weaponized research to ensure that no money goes to natural immunity, vaccine injuries, or the learning loss that kids experienced.
I want to ask you about the bird flu and this possible October surprise that we might have lockdowns. And we had another doctor on, Dr. Bartlett, last week, and he said that it's coming because there was one confirmed case in Missouri 3 days ago.
Yeah, so you're going to hear a lot of different things about bird flu. So far, we have not had any cases of human-to-human transmission. Some farm workers have gotten it directly from cattle, but if that happens, you're going to see a reset, and you're going to hear public health officials warn the public. So we're going to have to see. I encourage people not to jump to conclusions about how they're going to respond to bird flu until we understand the lethality and if it happens. Here's the tragedy of bird flu, Amy. We already have a universal flu shot that you would get once, presumably in a lifetime, and it would protect you against all the different strains of flu that have been out there, including bird flu. But pharma is not excited about it. What are we going to do if we don't rally everyone each year to get their flu shot? It's better to have a product that sells annually, even if it barely works. And this universal flu shot I write about in the book Blind Spots is sitting at the NIH. The scientists there have developed it, but the higher-ups, the bosses, haven't moved on it. So it's finished. It's got great animal data. It's finished the phase 1 human trial, and it's sitting on the shelf. So when you hear the CDC and the administration say, we're doing everything we can, to track and prevent bird flu, yeah, the vaccine that is probably the best vaccine is sitting on the shelf, and no one's interested, in part because it's not good for pharma's business, and it's not an mRNA vaccine. It's a traditional vaccine. So they've been told, hey, we're all intoxicated and drunk on mRNA technology. That's the only thing we're really interested in funding right now. We're not interested in traditional vaccines.
And it's not a Schedule II narcotic, so there's not interest.
Yeah.
What about Eastern equine encephalitis? Vermont and Massachusetts urging residents to stay indoors from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. because of a rise in EEE cases.
Well, look, I hate mosquitoes,
Yeah.
so
does Trump.
I'm not excited about mosquitoes, but there are a million viruses on planet Earth.
Let's be scared of all of them. We want to be afraid of all of them.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you can create fear around anything. The question is, at what point do you stop driving a car or swimming in a swimming pool? And so the disproportionate fear that we put around, look, I like to take everything seriously and weigh the risks relative to other risks. What's killing people today in America is not West Nile virus or the virus. It is our mental health crisis, our poison food supply, the fact that suicide is on the rise. So we have bigger problems in public health. The amount of time we spent focusing on masking toddlers with a cloth mask, and at the same time, public health officials don't care that where I live in the D.C. area, they pour raw sewage into the river. So, it's like they can't see the forest from the trees.
Dr. Marty Makary is Professor at Johns Hopkins and Bloomberg School of Public Health, Chief Medical Advisor to Sesame Care. He's the author of the award-winning book, The Price We Pay. His new book that we've been discussing in some detail is entitled Blind Spots, When Medicine Gets It Wrong and What It Means for Our Health. Pick up his book, Blind Spots. Dr. Marty Makary. Doctor, thanks so much for joining us again. Good to talk to you.
Good to be with you. The book comes out this weekend. I'm really excited about it. Just hit number 2 on Amazon, best-selling book in America. So I hope people enjoy Blind Spots.
Excellent.
Great. Good for you. Congratulations. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
You're listening to Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560. The Answer.
I'm attorney Stephen Leahy. My father was a union ironworker, just like his father, but while he inherited his father's skill, he did not inherit his tolerance for taking orders from union bosses. He needed a change, something that was his.